On Christmas Eve, Evelyn Hart signed papers that ended 8 years of lies. But the real nightmare was just beginning, because the man she divorced wasn't her husband at all. He was an imposter who'd stolen her memories, erased her past, and trapped her in a counterfeit life. Now a stranger claims to be her true husband, the one she can't remember, and the only way to survive is to trust him completely. If you love stories about stolen identities, dangerous secrets, and second chances at love, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. That one? The pen felt heavier than it should have. Evelyn Hart stared down at the signature line, her hand trembling despite the stillness of the room. Outside the apartment window, Chicago was blanketed in snow, the kind of picturesque Christmas Eve scene that belonged on greeting cards. Families were gathering. Lights were twinkling. Somewhere out there, people were happy. She wasn't one of them. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen table between her and Nathan Cole, the man she'd spent 8 years loving, trusting, believing in. The man who'd repaid that faith by sleeping with half the women in his office and draining their joint account to fund it. "Just sign it, Evelyn," Nathan said. His voice was flat, bored almost. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. He sat across from her in his expensive suit, checking his phone like this was just another tedious appointment. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw the papers in his face and demand answers. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? But she was too tired. 8 years of gaslighting, of being told she was paranoid, oversensitive, imagining things, had worn her down to nothing. So she signed. Her hand moved across the paper, forming the letters of her name one last time as Evelyn Cole. Tomorrow, she'd go back to being Evelyn Hart. As if those 8 years had never happened. As if she could just erase the damage and start over. Nathan didn't even wait for the ink to dry. He grabbed the papers, folded them once, and stood up. "Finally," he muttered. "My lawyer will file these first thing after Christmas. You've got until the end of January to clear out." Evelyn looked up at him. Really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man she'd married. The one who'd promised to love her in sickness and health, for better or worse. That man was gone. Maybe he'd never existed at all. "That's it?" she said quietly. 8 years? And that's all you have to say?" Nathan shrugged, already halfway to the door. "What do you want? A farewell speech?" "We're done, Evelyn. Move on." The door slammed behind him, and she was alone. The apartment, his apartment, she reminded herself bitterly, was freezing. He'd turned the heat down before he came, probably to make her uncomfortable, to remind her that she had no power here anymore. She pulled her sweater tighter and looked around at the space that had never quite felt like home. Most of her things were already packed. Not that there was much. Nathan had controlled the money, the lease, everything. She'd been so focused on supporting him, on being the perfect wife, that she'd let herself become dependent. Stupid. So incredibly stupid. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, expecting nothing, and saw a message from Northwestern Memorial. "Emergency staffing shortage. Can you cover Christmas Day 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Double pay." She almost laughed. Of course. Even the hospital didn't want to give her a break. But then again, what else did she have? No family. Her parents had died in a car accident 6 years ago, and she had no siblings, no close friends. Nathan had systematically isolated her from anyone who might have noticed what he was doing. No money, no home, no future. Just nursing. The one thing she was still good at. The one part of her life that still made sense. "I'll be there," she typed back. She set the phone down and walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. The city stretched out below her, millions of people living their lives, and she'd never felt more invisible, more erased. Tomorrow was Christmas. The day of miracles, supposedly. She didn't believe in those anymore. Christmas Day arrived with brutal cold and iron-gray skies. Evelyn dragged herself out of bed at 5:30, her body aching from a sleepless night on the couch. The bedroom, Nathan's bedroom now, was off limits. He'd made that clear. So she'd curled up under a thin blanket in the living room, shivering, listening to the building creak and settle around her. The hospital was a 30-minute train ride away. She bundled up in her heaviest coat, the one with the broken zipper that she kept meaning to fix, and stepped out into the frozen morning. The streets were deserted. Even the homeless encampments under the bridge were quiet. Everyone huddled inside whatever shelter they could find. The train was nearly empty, just her and a handful of other unfortunates working holiday shifts. She sat by the window and watched the city blur past, trying not to think about what came next. Where she'd go. How she'd afford an apartment on a nurse's salary when Chicago rent was astronomical and she had nothing saved. One problem at a time. Northwestern Memorial's was chaos when she arrived. The ER was slammed. Heart attacks, car accidents, a kitchen fire, 2 overdoses, and a kid who'd swallowed a Christmas ornament. Evelyn clocked in, tied her hair back, and threw herself into the work. This, at least, she could do. This, she was good at. "Trauma 2 now," someone shouted, and she was moving, her hands steady even as her mind screamed exhaustion. A teenage girl, bleeding from a car wreck. Evelyn got the IV in on the first try, her voice calm and sure as she talked the girl through it. "You're doing great, sweetheart. Stay with me. Eyes on me, okay?" The girl's mother was sobbing in the corner. Evelyn wanted to tell her it would be fine, that everything would work out, but she'd learned long ago not to make promises she couldn't keep. So she focused on the work. Pressure on the wound, fluids running, vitals stabilizing. The girl lived. Evelyn moved to the next patient, and the next, and the next. 12 hours blurred together in a haze of blood, pain, and the steady rhythm of saving lives that weren't her own. She didn't eat, barely drank water, just kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant breaking down. By the time her shift ended, she could barely stand. She clocked out at 7:15, changed out of her scrubs, and stumbled toward the exit. The hospital lobby was quieter now. The evening shift settled in. Christmas decorations glittered mockingly under the fluorescent lights. Silver garland, an enormous tree, fake snow. Evelyn pushed through the doors and into the night. The cold hit her like a fist. She gasped, her breath fogging in the air, and pulled her coat tighter. The broken zipper flapped uselessly. She needed to catch the train before the next one left her waiting in the cold for 20 minutes. She made it 3 steps before a hand caught her arm. "Evelyn Hart?" She spun around, instinct taking over. Her self-defense training, minimal as it was, kicked in, and she jerked her arm back, already opening her mouth to scream. But the man didn't grab her again. He stepped back immediately, hands raised. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to frighten you, but I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Evelyn stared at him, her heart hammering. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and eyes that looked almost black in the dim light. Expensive coat, tailored suit underneath. He looked like money. Old money. The kind of man who didn't wait in line at coffee shops. "I don't know you," she said, backing away. "Leave me alone." "You don't remember me," he corrected, his voice low and strangely gentle. "But you will. My name is Lucian Moretti, and 8 years ago you were my wife." Evelyn froze. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. "That's not possible," she said finally. "I was married to Nathan Cole. We just got divorced. I don't know who you are or what kind of scam you're running, but—" "Nathan Cole is not his real name," Lucian interrupted. "His real name is Marcus Moretti. He's my younger brother. And 8 years ago, he kidnapped you, erased your memories, and created a false identity to keep you away from me." The world tilted. Evelyn grabbed the railing beside her, her vision swimming. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. People didn't just lose 8 years of memories. That was movie nonsense, soap opera garbage. "You're insane," she whispered. "I know how it sounds," Lucian said. He took a step closer, and she saw something in his face, grief maybe, or desperation. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but I've been looking for you for 8 years, Evelyn. 8 years of dead ends and false leads, and now I've finally found you." "Stop calling me that," she snapped. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 29 years old. I grew up in Michigan, went to nursing school in Illinois, and married Nathan Cole when I was 21. That's my life. Not whatever fantasy you're selling." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Do you remember your childhood clearly? Your parents? Where you went to school?" "Of course I—" She stopped, frowned. The memories were there, weren't they? She remembered Michigan, remembered a small house, her mother's laugh, her father's stern face. Remembered high school, vague and distant. Nursing school, clearer. Meeting Nathan at a coffee shop, the whirlwind romance, the quick wedding. But when she tried to focus on the details, her parents' names, her childhood address, specific moments, Everything went fuzzy, slippery, like trying to hold water in her hands. No, that was normal. Everyone's childhood memories faded. That didn't mean anything. "You're messing with my head," she said, her voice shaking now. "I don't know what you want from me, but—" "I want you to come with me," Lucien said. "Just for 1 hour. Let me show you something. If after that you still think I'm lying, I'll leave you alone. You'll never see me again." "Why would I go anywhere with a stranger?" "Because deep down, you know something is wrong." His voice was quiet, but it cut through her denial like a blade. "You've always known, haven't you? That feeling that something doesn't quite fit, that you're living someone else's life." Evelyn opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because he was right. She'd felt it for years. That nagging sense of displacement, like she was wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. She'd told herself it was just dissatisfaction with her marriage, with Nathan's infidelity, with her own failures. But what if it was something else? 1 hour, Lucien said. "That's all I'm asking." She should say no, should run, should call the police. But exhaustion, curiosity, and 8 years of suffocating wrongness made her hesitate. "Where?" she asked finally. "My estate, 20 minutes from here." "I'm not getting in a car with you." "Then I'll arrange a driver, someone you can verify, and you can keep your phone, call anyone you want, leave whenever you want." He pulled out his own phone. "I'm not trying to trap you, Evelyn. I'm trying to free you." She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. All she saw was a man who looked like he'd been searching for something precious for far too long. "Fine," she said, the word coming out before she could stop it. 1 hour. "And if you're lying, I'm calling the cops and you're going to jail for harassment." "Fair enough." He made a call, speaking in low tones, and within 5 minutes a black town car pulled up to the curb. The driver got out, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. "This is Helen," Lucien said. "She's been with my family for 15 years. You can check her license, her background, anything you want." Evelyn did. She took a photo of the license plate, texted it to herself, and kept her finger hovering over the emergency call button on her phone as she climbed into the back seat. Lucien got in beside her, careful to leave space between them. The car pulled away from the hospital, and Evelyn watched the city lights blur past, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. What was she doing? But another part of her, the part that had been screaming silently for 8 years, whispered, "Finally." The estate was not what she expected. Evelyn had pictured something ostentatious, dripping with wealth and bad taste. Instead, the car turned through tall iron gates and down a long drive flanked by bare trees, pulling up in front of a sprawling stone mansion that looked like it had been standing for 100 years. Old money, real money. Helen opened the door, and Evelyn stepped out onto gravel, her breath fogging in the frozen air. Lucien gestured toward the house. "This way." She followed him up the steps and through heavy wooden doors into a foyer that smelled like wood smoke and old books. The interior was warm, tasteful, antique furniture, dark wood paneling, paintings that looked original. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, gray-haired, wearing a simple dress. "Mr. Moretti," she said, her eyes widening when she saw Evelyn. "Is that—" "It's her, Margaret," Lucien said quietly. "Would you bring the box from my study?" Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. "Of course." "Right away." She disappeared, and Lucien led Evelyn into a sitting room with a fireplace crackling against the winter cold. He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Evelyn sat, but she kept her coat on, her phone in her hand. "I'm going to show you some things," Lucien said, standing by the fire. "And I need you to keep an open mind." "I've got 53 minutes left of my hour," Evelyn said. "Start talking." He took a breath. 8 years ago, you were my wife. We met at a charity gala in New York. You were a nurse working at Mount Sinai, volunteering your time at a clinic in the Bronx. I was less idealistic. My family has money, a lot of it. Old wealth, old connections. My father ran the business, import-export, real estate, investments. All legitimate, or so I thought. What does this have to do with me? "I fell in love with you the first night we met," Lucien said simply. "You were different from everyone else in that room. Real, kind. You didn't care about my money or my name. You cared about people. We were married 6 months later." "That's impossible," Evelyn said. "I would remember getting married." You should. But Marcus, Nathan, as you know him, made sure you wouldn't. Margaret returned then carrying a wooden box. She set it on the table in front of Evelyn and stepped back, her eyes wet. "Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti," she whispered. Evelyn's hand shook as she reached for the box. Inside were photographs. The first one nearly stopped her heart. It was a wedding photo. A bride and groom on the steps of a small chapel, surrounded by flowers. The groom was Lucian, younger but unmistakable. And the bride? The bride was her. Evelyn stared at the photograph, her mind refusing to process it. That was her face, her smile. But she didn't remember this, didn't remember that dress, that chapel, that moment. "No," she said, shaking her head. "This is photoshopped. It has to be." "Keep looking," Lucian said gently. She pulled out more photos. A candid shot of her laughing at a dinner table, Lucian beside her. Another of the two of them on a beach somewhere, her hair windblown, his arm around her waist. A picture of her in scrubs, clearly taken at a hospital, smiling at the camera. Every photo showed a version of herself she didn't recognize. Happier, more alive. "This isn't me," she whispered, but even as she said it, doubt crept in. "There's more," Lucian said. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, a wedding ring, simple, elegant, with an inscription inside, L+E, forever. "You wore this," Lucian said, "until the day Marcus took you." Evelyn's hands trembled as she picked up the ring. It was the right size. She slipped it onto her finger almost without thinking, and it fit perfectly. A wave of dizziness hit her. For a split second, just a flash, she saw something. A memory maybe, or a dream. Lucian, younger, slipping this ring onto her finger in a small chapel. Her own voice, shaking with happiness, saying, "I do." Then it was gone. "What did he do to me?" she whispered. Lucian knelt in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "My brother has always been jealous of me. Growing up, he resented that I was the heir, that our father trusted me with the business. But I didn't realize how deep his hatred went until it was too late." Too late? Marcus was involved in things our father didn't know about. Illegal things. When I found out, I confronted him, threatened to turn him in. He told me he'd make me regret it. Lucian's voice hardened. "A week later, you disappeared." Evelyn felt sick. "How?" "You were taken from our home. I searched everywhere, hired investigators, offered rewards, contacted every agency I could think of. But there was no trace of you. It was like you'd vanished into thin air." He paused. "It took me years to find out what he'd done. Marcus had connections to people who specialize in erasing identities, memory suppression therapy, experimental drugs, psychological conditioning. They took you, broke down your sense of self, and rebuilt you as someone else." "That's not possible," Evelyn said, but her voice was weak now. "It is. And Marcus made sure you'd never come looking for me. He invented a past for you, parents who died, a childhood in Michigan, a normal life. Then he inserted himself into that life as Nathan Cole, the man you'd eventually marry. He kept you close, controlled, dependent. Made sure you'd never question the story he'd created." Evelyn's mind was reeling. "Why? Why would he do that?" Lucian's face twisted with something dark. "Because taking you away from me wasn't enough. He wanted to possess you himself, to prove he could have everything I had." She stood up, the room spinning. "This is insane. People don't just steal other people and brainwash them. This doesn't happen in real life. It does when you have enough money and no conscience." "Then why didn't you find me sooner? Why did it take 8 years? Because Marcus was smart," Lucian said. "He moved you around constantly those first few years, kept you isolated, made sure there was no trail. By the time I tracked him down, you were already Evelyn Hart, and he was Nathan Cole, living a quiet life in Chicago. I couldn't just approach you. You wouldn't have believed me. You would have thought I was insane. So I waited, watched, gathered evidence, and when I heard about your divorce, I knew it was time." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, but the photographs were real. The ring was real, and somewhere deep inside her, something was waking up. "I need proof," she said. "Real proof. Not just pictures and stories." "I have it," Lucian said. "Medical records from before your disappearance. Testimony from people who knew us. Security footage that shows Marcus entering facilities where memory suppression trials were being conducted. I've been building a case for years. Then why not go to the police? Because Marcus is careful, and because the kind of people who helped him erase you have powerful friends. I needed to find you first. Make sure you were safe. He stood, his expression earnest. I know this is overwhelming. I know you need time to process it. But please, Evelyn, stay here tonight. Let me show you everything. And tomorrow, if you still don't believe me, I'll take you wherever you want to go. She should say no. She should leave right now, call a cab, go back to that freezing apartment and her miserable life, and forget this ever happened. But the ring on her finger felt right. The photographs looked real, and the nagging wrongness that had haunted her for 8 years was screaming now, demanding she listen. One night, she said finally, and I want to see everything, every piece of evidence you have. Lucian's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Margaret appeared again, her face wet with tears. I'll prepare the guest room. No, Lucian said quietly. Prepare her room, the one we closed up 8 years ago. Margaret nodded and disappeared. Evelyn followed Lucian through the house, up a wide staircase, down a hallway lined with more photographs. He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hall and opened it. The room inside took her breath away. It was beautiful. Soft blues and creams, a 4-poster bed, a window seat overlooking dark gardens. But what made her chest tighten were the personal touches, books on the shelves that she somehow knew she'd read, a framed photo of a beach sunset, a music box on the dresser. She walked to the music box and opened it. A delicate melody played, and something inside her cracked. She knew this song. She didn't know how, didn't know why, but she knew it. This was ours, Lucian said from the doorway. Our room, our life. And I've kept it exactly as it was, waiting for you to come home. Evelyn sank onto the bed, her legs giving out. 8 years. 8 years of lies, manipulation, and a life that was never hers. And if Lucian was telling the truth, if even half of what he said was real, then everything she thought she knew was a fabrication. I don't remember, she whispered. You will, Lucian said. The mind protects itself. Buries trauma. But it's still there, Evelyn. You're still there. She looked up at him, this stranger who claimed to be her husband, and saw nothing but honesty in his eyes. What if I can't get it back, she asked. What if those memories are gone forever? Then we'll make new ones, Lucian said simply. But I think you'll remember, piece by piece, and when you do, we'll make Marcus pay for everything he took from us. Evelyn closed her eyes, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Tomorrow, she'd ask more questions. Tomorrow, she'd demand proof, investigate, verify every claim. But tonight, in this room that felt inexplicably familiar, she let herself believe just for a moment that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found her way home. Evelyn didn't sleep. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, or was it unfamiliar, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around her. Every creak of floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows made her flinch. The music box sat silent on the dresser, but that melody kept playing in her head, over and over, like her brain was trying to solve a puzzle it didn't have all the pieces for. At some point during the night, she got up and went to the window. The garden stretched out below, skeletal trees casting long shadows across snow-covered lawns. In the distance, she could see the lights of Chicago, a faint glow on the horizon. Out there was the life she knew, the apartment she'd be kicked out of in a month, the job that barely paid enough to survive, the divorce that was supposed to set her free, but had only left her more lost than ever. And here, in this house that smelled like wood smoke and old memories, was a man claiming she'd been stolen, erased, remade into someone else. She touched the ring on her finger. She'd meant to take it off, but her hand had refused. It fit too well, felt too right. When dawn finally broke, gray and cold, she was still standing at the window. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Come in, she said, her voice rough from not sleeping. Margaret entered with a tray, coffee, toast, fruit. The older woman's eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. I thought you might be hungry, Margaret said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. Thank you. Evelyn hesitated. How long have you worked here? 23 years. Margaret's hands twisted in her apron. I was here when Mr. Lucian brought you home the first time. I helped you pick out the colors for this room. You wanted blue because it reminded you of the ocean. Evelyn's chest tightened. I don't remember. I know. Margaret's voice broke. But I do. And seeing you here again after all these years, she wiped her eyes quickly. I'm sorry, I shouldn't burden you with this. It's not a burden, Evelyn said quietly. I need to understand what happened to me. Mr. Lucian has documents in his study. He's been waiting for you to wake up. Margaret moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you were happy here. I saw it every day, and when you disappeared, it nearly destroyed him. Before Evelyn could respond, Evelyn drank the coffee. Black, the way she'd always taken it, though she couldn't remember ever telling anyone that preference, and forced down some toast. Then she showered in the attached bathroom, using the expensive soaps and shampoos that were laid out. The hot water felt like a luxury after months of Nathan's penny pinching and broken water heaters. When she emerged, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Simple, tasteful, jeans, a soft sweater, warm socks. They fit perfectly. Of course they did. She dressed, braided her wet hair, and went downstairs. The house looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more lived in. She passed rooms filled with furniture that was obviously expensive but not showy. Art on the walls that looked like it had been chosen for love, not investment. This wasn't a showplace. It was a home. She found Lucian in a wood-paneled study, paper spread across a massive desk. He looked up when she entered, and she saw the exhaustion on his face. He hadn't slept either. Good morning, he said carefully. Is it? Evelyn closed the door behind her. I've been up all night trying to decide if you're telling the truth or if I've lost my mind. And what did you decide? That I need to see your evidence. All of it. Lucian nodded and gestured to a chair across from his desk. Fair enough. For the next 2 hours, he showed her everything. Medical records from a hospital in New York, Mount Sinai, with her name and photo. Employment records showing she'd worked there as a trauma nurse. Tax returns. A lease for an apartment in Manhattan. Credit card statements showing purchases she didn't remember making at places she'd never been. Then came the photographs. Dozens of them, spanning what looked like 2 years. Her and Lucian at restaurants, at the theater, walking through Central Park. Candid shots that couldn't have been staged. Her face in those photos was open, unguarded, happy in a way she hadn't been in years. This is from our honeymoon, Lucian said, sliding another photo across the desk. Santorini, you said you'd always wanted to see Greece. In the photo, she was standing on a white-walled terrace overlooking impossible blue water, wearing a sundress, laughing at something off camera. She looked young, carefree. She looked like a stranger. I don't remember any of this, Evelyn said, but her voice wavered. Your brain is protecting you, Lucian said. Trauma does that. But the memories are still there, buried, but not gone. He pulled out another folder. These are the hard parts, the investigation files. Inside were reports from private investigators, surveillance photos, and documents that made her stomach turn. Photos of Nathan, Marcus, she corrected herself, entering a building in New Jersey. Security footage timestamps, financial records showing payments to a pharmaceutical company that had been shut down for conducting illegal trials. Memory suppression therapy, Lucian said. It's experimental. Mostly used for PTSD patients, but in the wrong hands. He stopped, his jaw tight. They used a combination of drugs and psychological conditioning, broke down your existing memories and implanted new ones. It's not perfect. The false memories are fragile, which is why you've probably always felt something was off, but it was enough to make you forget who you really were. Evelyn felt sick. How is that even legal? It's not. The company that did it was operating in a gray area, taking money from people who wanted problems to disappear. Marcus paid them a fortune. Then he moved you to Chicago, set up the false identity as Evelyn Hart, and positioned himself to meet you a year later. The coffee shop, Evelyn whispered. He said he saw me reading a book and thought I looked interesting. A lie. All of it. Lucian's voice was bitter. He manufactured your entire relationship, made you dependent on him, isolated you from anyone who might have questioned your past. And then, when he got bored, he cheated and discarded you like you were nothing. Evelyn's hands shook as she set down the photos. I need air. Of course, Lucian stood. There's a garden path behind the house. Take as much time as you need. She fled the study, grabbed her coat from the foyer, and pushed out into the freezing morning. The garden path was covered in snow, but someone had cleared it recently. She walked fast, her breath coming in sharp gasps, trying to process what she'd just learned. If Lucian was telling the truth, and the evidence was overwhelming, then her entire adult life had been a fabrication. Every memory she had of the past 8 years was built on a foundation of lies. She'd been kidnapped, brainwashed, turned into someone else. And Marcus, Nathan, the man she'd loved and trusted, had orchestrated all of it. The rage that hit her was so sudden and fierce it nearly brought her to her knees. She grabbed onto a stone bench, gasping, her vision blurring with tears. All those years, all that pain, the gaslighting, the cheating, the financial abuse. She'd thought it was her fault. Thought she wasn't good enough, wasn't trying hard enough, but it had never been about her. She'd been a trophy, a possession, proof that Marcus could take whatever his brother had and make it his own. "Bastard," she whispered. Then louder, "You bastard!" She screamed it into the frozen air and the sound echoed off the trees. Behind her she heard footsteps crunching in the snow. "I'm sorry," Lucian said quietly. "I wish I could have found you sooner." Evelyn turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How did you stand it, knowing I was out there somewhere, not even knowing who I was?" "I didn't stand it well," Lucian admitted. "I searched obsessively, spent every resource I had, pushed away everyone who tried to help because all I could think about was finding you. And when I finally did, I had to watch you from a distance, knowing you wouldn't recognize me, knowing you thought you loved the man who'd stolen you from me." "I didn't love him," Evelyn said fiercely. "I loved who I thought he was, but that person never existed." "No, he didn't." They stood in silence for a moment, two people connected by a past only one of them could remember. "What happens now?" Evelyn asked finally. "That's up to you," Lucian said. "I can show you more evidence, introduce you to people who knew you before, help you try to recover your memories, or, if this is too much, I can arrange for you to go somewhere safe while I handle Marcus legally." "I don't want to hide." "Then what do you want?" Evelyn wiped her eyes, her jaw set. "I want my life back, the real one, and I want Marcus to pay for what he did." Something fierce and approving flashed in Lucian's eyes. "Then we'll make that happen." They walked back to the house together, and Evelyn felt something shift inside her. The lost, broken woman who'd signed those divorce papers was still there, but she was waking up, getting angry, getting ready to fight. Over the next few days, Lucian introduced her to pieces of her stolen past. Dr. Sarah Chen had been her supervisor at Mount Sinai. She arrived at the estate on the third day, a small Asian woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile that faltered when she saw Evelyn. "My dear girl," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "We thought you were dead." They sat in the library and Sarah told her stories, about the night shift traumas they'd handled together, about Evelyn's dedication to the pediatric patients, about the time she'd stayed 18 hours straight to help a young mother through a difficult delivery. "You were the best nurse I ever supervised," Sarah said. "You cared so much it sometimes worried me. I thought you'd burn out." She paused. "And then you met Lucian, and I saw you start to balance that dedication with something else. Joy. You deserved that." Evelyn listened, trying to match these stories with the person she knew herself to be. Some of it resonated. The dedication to patients, the long hours, the need to help. That felt true. But the joy Sarah described felt foreign. "What was I like?" Evelyn asked. "Before?" Sarah considered. "You were softer than you are now, more open, but you had this core of steel underneath. When you believed in something, you didn't back down." She smiled sadly. "I see that steel more clearly now. Whatever you've been through, it brought that part of you to the surface." Next came Robert Kim, Lucian's business partner and best friend. He was younger than Evelyn expected, maybe mid-30s, with an easy manner that made her relax slightly. "You hated me at first," Robert said cheerfully over dinner. "Thought I was a bad influence on Lucian. Too focused on profit margins, not enough on ethics." "Was I wrong?" Evelyn asked. "Completely. I'm delightful." He grinned. "But you came around eventually, even helped me set up a pro bono legal clinic in the Bronx. Said if I was going to make obscene amounts of money, I should at least do some good with it." "That sounds like something I'd say now," Evelyn admitted. "Because you're still you," Robert said simply. Marcus tried to erase you, but he failed. The core of who you are, that person survived. That night, alone in her room again, Evelyn looked through more photographs. Lucien had given her boxes of them. She studied her own face, searching for recognition. In one photo, she was in scrubs holding a newborn baby, her face soft with wonder. In another, she was at some formal event, wearing a green dress, Lucien's arm around her waist. She looked comfortable, safe. She'd never felt safe with Nathan. Always on edge, waiting for the next criticism, the next lie. The contrast was stark. She set the photos aside and opened her laptop. Lucien had given her one along with access to everything she needed. She pulled up her own medical records from Chicago, the ones from her time with Nathan. Routine checkups. Nothing unusual. Except, she frowned, clicking through the files. 3 years ago, she'd been prescribed anti-anxiety medication by a doctor she didn't recognize. She'd thought Nathan had set up the appointment, said it was for her stress, but she'd never felt anxious before that. And after taking the medication for 6 months, she'd felt foggy, disconnected. She'd stopped taking it against Nathan's wishes, and he'd been furious. Her hand stilled on the keyboard. What if it hadn't been anti-anxiety medication at all? What if it had been something else? Something to reinforce the false memories, keep her compliant? She added it to the growing list of questions. The next morning, Lucien found her in his study, surrounded by papers. "You should be resting," he said. "I'll rest when I understand what happened to me." She looked up at him. "The medication Nathan gave me 3 years ago. Can we test it? Find out what it really was?" "You still have it?" "Some. I kept the bottle even after I stopped taking it. Habit, I guess." "We can have it analyzed." Lucien sat across from her. "Evelyn, you don't have to do this all at once. You've been through trauma. It's okay to take time to process." "I've lost 8 years," she said flatly. "I don't have time to waste." He studied her for a moment. "You're different than you were. Harder. Is that bad?" "No, just different." He paused. "The woman I married was gentle, kind to a fault. You're still kind, but there's an edge now. A wariness." "Marcus taught me to be wary." "I know, and I hated that he changed you." "Maybe he didn't," Evelyn said slowly. "Maybe this is who I would have become anyway. Life hardens people. Trauma shapes us. I can't get back the person I was 8 years ago, Lucien. That woman is gone. But I can become someone new, someone stronger." Lucien's expression softened. "You're already stronger than you know." They worked together through the morning, building a timeline of Marcus's movements, his financial transactions, his connections to the pharmaceutical company. The evidence was damning, but Lucien was right. Marcus had been careful. Everything was layers deep, hidden behind shell companies and proxies. "He's protected," Lucien said. "Taking him down legally is going to be complicated." "Then we don't do it legally," Evelyn said. Lucien looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we make him confess. Get him on record admitting what he did. He's too smart for that. Not if he thinks he's won." Evelyn's mind was racing. "He discarded me, right? Moved on. He probably thinks I'm broken, defeated. What if I gave him a reason to gloat, to tell me exactly how clever he was?" "You want to confront him." "I want to destroy him." Her voice was cold. "But first, I need him to think he's destroyed me." Lucien shook his head. "It's too dangerous. If he even suspects, he won't, because I'll give him exactly what he expects. A desperate ex-wife looking for closure." She met Lucien's eyes. "Trust me. I do trust you. That's not the issue. The issue is that Marcus is dangerous. If he realizes you remember anything, or if he finds out you've been here with me, he won't. I'll be careful." They argued about it for hours. Lucien wanted to protect her, keep her safe behind the walls of his estate, while he and Robert built an airtight legal case. But Evelyn refused to hide. She'd been a victim long enough. Finally, Lucien gave in. "On one condition, you wear a wire, and I'm nearby the entire time." "Deal." They spent the next week preparing. Robert helped them set up the wire, a tiny device that looked like a pendant, nearly invisible. They rehearsed what Evelyn would say, how she'd approach Marcus, what emotional buttons to push. "He's arrogant," Lucien said during one of their sessions. "Always has been. If you make him think he's smarter than you, that he's won completely, He'll want to rub your face in it. I know his type, Evelyn said grimly. I lived with him for 8 years. The night before the confrontation, Evelyn couldn't sleep again. She sat in the library, staring into the fire, trying to quiet the fear that whispered she was making a terrible mistake. Lucian found her there around midnight. Second thoughts? He asked. Third and fourth thoughts, she admitted, but I'm still doing it. He sat beside her. I failed to protect you once. If something happens tomorrow, nothing's going to happen. I'll get him talking, get the confession, and walk away. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. They sat in silence for a while. Then Evelyn asked the question that had been gnawing at her for days. Do you still love me? Lucian turned to look at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly broke her. I never stopped, he said quietly. Even when I didn't know if you were alive or dead, I couldn't let you go. I know you don't remember what we had. I know I'm a stranger to you now, but yes, Evelyn, I still love you. I don't remember loving you, she said, and saw him flinch. But I want to. I look at those photographs and I see someone happy, really happy. I haven't been happy in so long I'd forgotten what it looked like. You'll get there again. What if I don't? What if my memories never come back? What if I'm stuck like this, knowing intellectually that we had something but never feeling it? Lucian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Then we'll start over. I'll court you properly this time. Take you to dinner, bring you flowers, bore you with terrible jokes. And maybe, if I'm lucky, you'll fall in love with me again. Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. Terrible jokes? The worst. Robert says it's my most annoying quality. I'd like to hear them sometime. Careful what you wish for. They sat together by the fire, her hand in his, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, Evelyn felt something other than anger or fear. She felt hope. The next morning arrived too quickly. Evelyn dressed carefully, old jeans, a worn sweater, minimal makeup. She needed to look defeated, broken. The wire pendant hung around her neck, cold against her skin. Robert had tested it 3 times. It was working perfectly. Lucian drove her to a cafe 3 blocks from the apartment she'd shared with Nathan. It was a public place, safe, with security cameras Robert had already verified. Nathan had agreed to meet her there, probably assuming she wanted to beg for money or more time to move out. He had no idea what was coming. I'll be across the street, Lucian said as she got out of the car. Any trouble? Any sign that he's on to you? You walk away. Understood? Understood? Evelyn. He caught her hand. Be careful. I will. She walked into the cafe, her heart pounding so hard she thought the wire might pick it up. Nathan was already there, sitting at a corner table checking his phone. He looked up when she approached, and his expression was everything she hated. Smug, dismissive, vaguely annoyed. You're late, he said. Sorry. She sat across from him, making her hands shake slightly. Not hard. She was genuinely terrified. Thanks for meeting me. You said you had questions about the settlement. Make it quick. I have a lunch meeting. Of course he did. Evelyn took a breath, channeling every ounce of vulnerability she'd ever felt during their marriage. I need to understand. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? Nathan sighed like she'd asked him to explain calculus to a toddler. Evelyn, we've been through this. We weren't compatible. You were clingy, boring. I needed more. More than someone who worked 12-hour shifts to support your career? More than someone who cooked your meals and cleaned your apartment and never complained when you came home late smelling like someone else's perfume? See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Nathan leaned back in his chair. You're always the victim. Always making me the bad guy. Did it ever occur to you that maybe you were the problem? I was the problem, Evelyn repeated softly. Keep him talking. Let him dig his own grave. You're right. I should have been better. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Satisfaction. At least you finally admit it. I just wish I understood when it started. When did you decide I wasn't good enough? Honestly? From the beginning. Nathan shrugged. You were a project. A way to prove a point. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. What point? That I could have anything my brother had. That I was just as good as him, if not better. Nathan's smile was cold. He thought he was so special, inheriting everything, getting the perfect wife. I showed him he wasn't. Your brother? Evelyn let confusion creep into her voice. You never mentioned having a brother. Because he's nobody. Just some rich asshole who thought he was better than me. Nathan leaned forward, and Evelyn forced herself not to recoil. But I took what mattered most to him, took her right out of his house and made her mine. And the best part? She never even knew. Nathan, what are you talking about? You really don't remember, do you? He laughed. The treatments worked better than I expected. You have no idea who you really are. You actually believe you're Evelyn Hart from Michigan, ordinary nurse, tragic orphan. I don't understand. Of course you don't. That's the point. Nathan's arrogance was breathtaking. You were Evelyn Moretti, Lucian's precious wife, and I stole you, erased you, and remade you into someone who'd never even think to look for him. It was brilliant, really. Evelyn's hands clenched under the table. You took me from someone else? I took you from my self-righteous brother who thought he deserved everything handed to him on a silver platter. And for 8 years, I made you mine. Made you depend on me, believe in me. It was perfect revenge. Until you got bored, Evelyn whispered. Until you got predictable, Nathan corrected. Clingy, needy, always wanting reassurance. You weren't fun anymore, so I moved on. Found someone more interesting. He checked his watch. Is that all? Because I really do have that meeting. Just one more thing, Evelyn said quietly. She reached up and touched the pendant around her neck. Did you ever love me at all? Even a little? Nathan laughed. Actually laughed. Love you? Evelyn, I barely tolerated you. You were a means to an end, a trophy I took from my brother and got tired of. I see. Evelyn stood, her legs surprisingly steady. Thank you for clarifying that. Whatever helps you move on. Nathan was already standing, ready to leave. Lose my number, okay? This is getting pathetic. He walked past her and out of the cafe without looking back. Evelyn stood there for a moment, shaking, not with fear now, but with rage so pure it felt like fire in her veins. She had him. Every word, every confession, every cruel, arrogant admission. She walked out of the cafe and across the street to where Lucian was waiting in the car. When she got in, he took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. Did you get it? He asked. Every word, Evelyn said against his shoulder. He confessed to everything, taking me, erasing my memories, creating the false identity. He couldn't help himself. He was so proud of what he'd done. Then we have him. Evelyn pulled back, her eyes hard. We have him. Now what? Now, Lucian said, his own expression turning cold. We destroy him. Robert listened to the recording 3 times before he spoke. They were back at the estate, gathered in Lucian's study with the door locked. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the desk where Robert's laptop sat. The audio file paused mid-confession. This is gold, Robert said finally. He admits to kidnapping, memory manipulation, identity fraud. He even names you specifically, Lucian. Any competent prosecutor would salivate over this. But? Evelyn heard the hesitation in his voice. Robert ran a hand through his hair. But Marcus has resources, good lawyers, the kind who'll argue the recording was obtained under duress or that it's been doctored or that he was joking. They'll drag this out for years if they can. So the confession isn't enough, Lucian said. It's a start, a damn good one. But we need more. We need the pharmaceutical company's records. We need proof of the payments Marcus made. We need witnesses who can testify to what happened 8 years ago. The company that did the memory suppression was shut down, Evelyn said. How do we get their records? They were shut down, but their files were seized by the state medical board during the investigation. Those records are supposed to be sealed, but Robert's smile was sharp. I know someone who owes me a favor. How long will that take? Evelyn asked. A week, maybe 2. The legal system moves slowly. We don't have 2 weeks. Lucian's voice was tight. If Marcus gets even a hint that we're building a case against him, he'll disappear. He has offshore accounts, connections in countries without extradition treaties. He'll vanish, and we'll never see him again. Then we need to move faster, Evelyn said. We need something that forces him out into the open, something he can't ignore. Like what? Robert asked. Evelyn thought back to the cafe, to the way Marcus had looked at her, the contempt, the arrogance. He'd been so pleased with himself, so certain he'd won completely. "He thinks he destroyed me," she said slowly. "What if I proved him wrong? What if I showed up somewhere he couldn't ignore, somewhere public, looking like everything he tried to take from me is back?" "You want to provoke him?" Lucian said. "I want to make him panic. People make mistakes when they panic." Robert leaned back in his chair, considering. "There's a charity gala next Saturday. One of the big ones. Everyone who's anyone in Chicago society will be there. The Morettis have been major donors for years, so Marcus will definitely attend. If you showed up there, on Lucian's arm, very much not broken." "He'd lose his mind," Lucian finished. "But Evelyn, that's incredibly risky. If he confronts you in public, then we'll have witnesses," Evelyn interrupted. "And if he's rattled enough, he might say something incriminating, something we can use. Or he might hurt you." "He can try." Evelyn's voice was harder than she meant it to be. "I'm done being afraid of him." Lucian looked at her for a long moment. She saw the war playing out behind his eyes, the desire to protect her battling against his respect for her agency. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, but we do this smart. You don't leave my side the entire night. Robert will have security positioned throughout the venue, and at the first sign of real danger, we pull you out." Agreed. Over the next week, Evelyn found herself caught in a strange kind of limbo. During the days, she worked with Robert and Lucian, going over Marcus's financial records, identifying shell companies and suspicious transactions. At night, she sat alone in her room, the room that had supposedly been hers 8 years ago, and tried to remember. Some memories came back in fragments. A flash of walking through Central Park in autumn, leaves crunching underfoot, the smell of coffee from a cafe she'd apparently loved, the feel of Lucian's hand in hers, warm and solid. But they were just fragments, disconnected pieces that wouldn't form a complete picture. Sarah visited again midweek, bringing photo albums from their time working together at Mount Sinai. They sat in the library and Sarah talked her through each image. "That was the night we handled that multi-vehicle accident," Sarah said, pointing to a photo of Evelyn in scrubs, looking exhausted. 17 patients in 4 hours. You were incredible. Kept everyone calm, made sure nothing fell through the cracks." "I remember doing that kind of work," Evelyn said. "Just not that specific night." "It'll come back. The brain is remarkable at healing itself." Sarah hesitated. "How are you handling all of this? Finding out your whole life was a lie?" "I'm furious," Evelyn admitted, "and scared. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night convinced this is all some elaborate delusion and I'm actually having a breakdown. That's a normal response to trauma. Nothing about this is normal." "No," Sarah agreed, "but you're handling it better than most would. You're fighting back. That takes courage." "Or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet." Sarah smiled. "With you, it's usually both." Margaret helped Evelyn prepare for the gala. The older woman pulled out a dress that had been stored in a garment bag at the back of the closet. Emerald green silk that fit like it had been tailored specifically for her, because it had been, 8 years ago. "You wore this to a fundraiser in New York," Margaret said, adjusting the zipper. "Mr. Lucian couldn't take his eyes off you all night." Evelyn studied herself in the mirror. The dress was beautiful, elegant without being ostentatious. It made her look sophisticated, confident, nothing like the defeated woman who'd signed those divorce papers. "Thank you, Margaret," she said quietly. "You don't need to thank me." Margaret's reflection smiled in the mirror. "I'm just glad to have you home." Home. The word still felt foreign, but less so than it had a week ago. The night of the gala arrived with fresh snow and temperatures that made Evelyn's breath fog even inside the car. Lucian had insisted on driving himself rather than using a service, and she was grateful for the privacy. She was nervous enough without strangers watching. "You look beautiful," Lucian said as they pulled out of the estate's gates. "I look like I'm wearing a costume," Evelyn said, smoothing the silk over her lap. "Playing dress-up in someone else's life." "It's your life. It was always your life." "A life I don't remember." "Then make new memories tonight." Lucian glanced at her. "Good ones, preferably. Ones that don't involve my brother trying to kill anyone." Despite her nerves, Evelyn laughed. "Is that likely?" "With Marcus? Anything's possible." The gala was being held at one of Chicago's historic hotels, the kind with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and enough gilt to make your eyes hurt. Lucian pulled up to the valet, and suddenly there were people everywhere. Photographers, security, guests in expensive formal wear climbing the steps. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. "Ready?" Lucian asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." He came around to open her door, offering his hand. She took it, feeling the solid warmth of his grip, and stepped out into the cold. The cameras started flashing immediately. Evelyn froze for a second, blinded, but Lucian's hand tightened on hers. "Just smile," he murmured. "They'll lose interest in a minute." She smiled, though it felt brittle. They walked up the steps together, past curious stares and whispered speculation. She heard fragments of conversation as they passed. Thought she was dead. 8 years, can you imagine? Marcus is going to lose his mind when he sees her. Inside, the ballroom was exactly as overwhelming as Evelyn had feared. Hundreds of people in designer clothes, drinking champagne, networking and gossiping while a string quartet played something classical in the corner. Enormous flower arrangements dominated every surface, and the walls were draped in white silk. Robert appeared at their side almost immediately. "Security's in place," he said quietly. "We've got eyes on all the exits. Marcus arrived 20 minutes ago. He's on the far side of the room near the auction tables." "Has he seen us yet?" Lucian asked. "Not yet, but he will." They moved into the crowd, and Evelyn felt like she was walking through a dream. People kept stopping Lucian to shake his hand, offer condolences on his loss, express shock that Evelyn was alive. She smiled and nodded and let Lucian do most of the talking, all while scanning the room for Marcus. She spotted him near a table displaying auction items, luxury vacations, artwork, jewelry. He was talking to a blonde woman in a red dress, laughing at something she'd said. He looked relaxed, happy, like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't destroyed multiple lives for his own amusement. Evelyn's hands clenched at her sides. "Easy," Lucian murmured. "Not yet." They circulated through the room, making small talk with donors and board members. Evelyn found herself slipping into the role almost naturally, the gracious companion, interested but not intrusive. Maybe it was muscle memory from her previous life. Or maybe she was just good at pretending. After about 30 minutes, she saw the moment Marcus noticed them. He'd been reaching for a champagne flute from a passing waiter when his gaze swept across the room and landed on her. The glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound cut through the ambient conversation like a gunshot. People turned to look. Marcus stood there, champagne soaking into his expensive shoes, his face gone absolutely white. "There we go," Robert said under his breath. Marcus stared at Evelyn for a long moment, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally rage. Then he was moving, shoving through the crowd toward them. "Lucian," Evelyn said quietly. "I see him." Marcus reached them before they could move away. Up close, Evelyn could see the fury in his eyes, barely controlled. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "Hello, Marcus," Lucian said calmly, "enjoying the gala." "You can't be here," Marcus said, ignoring his brother and staring at Evelyn. "You're supposed to be—" "Broken?" Evelyn finished. "Sorry to disappoint." People were starting to notice the confrontation. A circle of empty space was forming around them as other guests backed away, sensing drama. "I don't know what game you're playing," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. "But you need to leave. Now." "Why would I leave?" Evelyn asked. "I was invited. Unlike you, apparently, who can't seem to hold on to a glass of champagne." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Evelyn, you don't understand what you've gotten yourself into." "Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that you kidnapped me 8 years ago. I understand that you erased my memories and created a false identity. I understand that you trapped me in a marriage based on lies." Her voice rose slightly. "I understand that you're a pathetic, jealous coward who couldn't stand that your brother had something you wanted." The crowd around them had gone silent. Phones were coming out, recording. "You're insane," Marcus hissed. "You've always been unstable. That's why our marriage fell apart." "We didn't have a marriage," Evelyn said. "We had a kidnapping, and I have proof." Marcus's eyes darted to Lucian. "What did you do? What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth," Lucian said. "Something you've never been capable of." "The truth?" Marcus laughed, but it sounded brittle. "You told her your version of events, your paranoid delusions about me stealing your precious wife." "Evelyn, listen to me. Whatever he said, it's lies. He's been obsessed with you for years, convinced himself we were involved when we weren't. I have a recording, Evelyn interrupted, of you confessing, every word. The blood drained from Marcus's face. You're bluffing. Am I? Evelyn pulled her phone from her clutch and held it up. Would you like me to play it for everyone here? Let them hear you admit to kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy? Marcus lunged for the phone. He was fast, but Lucian was faster. He caught Marcus's wrist mid-grab, his grip iron tight. Don't, Lucian said, his voice deadly quiet. Security appeared then. 3 large men in suits moving smoothly through the crowd. Robert must have signaled them. Gentlemen, one of them said, we're going to need you to take this outside. He attacked her, Lucian said, not releasing Marcus's wrist. Multiple witnesses saw it. I didn't. She provoked. Marcus was stammering now, his composure cracking. This is a setup. They're trying to frame me. Frame you for what? The security guard asked. Marcus realized his mistake too late. He shut his mouth, his face mottled with rage and fear. Let's all step into the manager's office, the guard said. Sort this out privately. Actually, Robert said, materializing at Evelyn's elbow with his phone out, I've already contacted the police. They're very interested in hearing about some allegations of kidnapping and identity fraud. You can't do this, Marcus said, but his voice had gone thin. I have rights. I have lawyers. So do we, Lucian said. Better ones. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Police arrived. Statements were taken. The gala guests watched from a distance, whispering and recording everything on their phones. Evelyn found herself repeating her story to a detective, a woman with tired eyes who took notes in a worn notebook. You're saying he kidnapped you 8 years ago? The detective asked. Yes. I have medical records proving my identity. I have financial records showing suspicious payments, and I have a recording of him confessing to everything. Evelyn kept her voice steady. His real name is Marcus Moretti. The name he's been using, Nathan Cole, is an alias. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. The detective looked at Lucian. You're willing to testify to all this? Absolutely, Lucian said. I've been investigating my brother's crimes for years. I can provide documentation, witness testimony, and forensic evidence. I want to press charges, Evelyn said, for kidnapping, fraud, and whatever else applies. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The detective nodded slowly. We'll need you to come to the station, give a formal statement. This is going to take time. I don't care how long it takes, Evelyn said. I want justice. Marcus was being held by 2 uniformed officers, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked smaller somehow, his arrogance stripped away to reveal the frightened man underneath. Evelyn, he said, his voice almost pleading, don't do this. We can work something out. I made mistakes, okay? I'll admit that. But you don't want to destroy my life over this. You destroyed mine first, Evelyn said coldly. 8 years, Marcus. You stole 8 years from me, from both of us. You don't get to ask for mercy now. I loved you, Marcus said desperately. Maybe not at first, but I did. Eventually. You have to believe that. I don't believe anything you say, not anymore. They took him away then, out through a side entrance to avoid the cameras. Evelyn watched him go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just a cold certainty that this was only the beginning. The detective gave them her card and said someone would contact them in the morning to schedule their formal statements. Robert dealt with the hotel management, smoothing over the disruption, and Lucian stood beside Evelyn through all of it, a steady presence in the chaos. When it was finally over and they were walking back to the car, Evelyn's legs nearly gave out. I've got you, Lucian said, catching her elbow. I'm fine. You're shaking. She was. Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, her whole body was trembling. She'd confronted her abuser in front of hundreds of people. She'd held her ground. She'd won. So why did she feel like she might fall apart? They drove back to the estate in silence. Evelyn stared out the window at the dark streets, her mind racing. You were incredible tonight, Lucian said finally. I was terrified. That makes it more impressive, not less. He tried to grab my phone. He actually tried to... Her voice cracked. What if he'd gotten it? What if he'd deleted the recording? He didn't, and even if he had, we have backups, multiple copies and multiple secure locations. Robert made sure of that. Right, of course. Evelyn pressed her hands against her thighs to stop them shaking. What happens now? Now the legal system takes over. The district attorney will review the evidence, Marcus will be arraigned, there'll be a trial. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. Lucian glanced at her. Are you ready for that? It's going to be brutal. His lawyers will attack your credibility, claim you're mentally unstable, drag up every difficult moment of your life. Let them try. Evelyn's jaw set. I'm not backing down. I know you're not, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't going to be quick or easy. Nothing worth doing is. They pulled up to the estate, and Margaret was waiting inside with tea and sympathy. Evelyn let herself be fussed over for a few minutes before excusing herself to her room. She changed out of the green dress and into comfortable clothes, then sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. There was a soft knock on the door. Come in, she said. Lucian entered, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened. He looked as exhausted as she felt. I wanted to make sure you were okay, he said. I'm not, but I will be. Evelyn gestured to the chair by the window. Sit. You look like you're about to collapse. He sat, his shoulders sagging. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Watching him confront you, knowing I couldn't protect you from what he'd say. You did protect me. You kept him from grabbing the phone. Barely. Lucian's hands clenched. If he'd hurt you, I would have killed him. I know. Evelyn surprised herself by meaning it, but he didn't, and now he's in custody. We won. We won the first battle. The war is just starting. Then we'll fight it together. Lucian looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. You don't owe me that, Evelyn. If you want to walk away, start fresh somewhere else. I'll understand. I'll make sure you're protected, that you have resources. Stop, Evelyn interrupted. I'm not leaving. Not when we're this close to making him pay. It's not just about making him pay, though, is it? Lucian's voice was quiet. You're staying because you feel obligated, because you think you owe me for finding you. No, Evelyn said. I'm staying because I want to, because for the first time in 8 years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even though you don't remember? Even though. She stood and crossed to where he sat, kneeling in front of him so they were eye level. I look at those photographs, and I see a woman who is happy. Really, genuinely happy. I want that back, Lucian. Maybe not the memories, maybe those are gone forever, but the feeling, the life, the person I was before Marcus took it all away. What if you can't get it back? Then I'll build something new. But I'm not running away. Not from this, not from you, not from the fight we're about to face. She took his hands. I'm all in. Whether you want me to be or not. Lucian's grip tightened on her fingers. I want you to be, more than anything. They sat like that for a moment, hands clasped, the silence comfortable between them. Tell me something, Evelyn said. Something you loved about me. Before, Lucian thought for a moment. You laughed at your own jokes, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. You tell some terrible pun and then dissolve into giggles before you even got to the punchline. It was ridiculous and charming and completely unself-conscious. Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. I still do that sometimes. I know, I've noticed. What else? You sang in the shower, off-key, usually show tunes. Our neighbors complained once and you just sang louder. He smiled at the memory. You were fearless in the strangest ways. Afraid of spiders, but not of standing up to hospital administrators twice your age when you thought a patient was being mistreated. That sounds about right, Evelyn admitted. And you loved mornings, not the waking up part. You were terrible at that. But once you were up, you loved the quiet before the world got loud. You'd sit at the window with coffee and just watch the sunrise. Evelyn glanced at the window where dawn was still hours away. I don't remember that, but it sounds nice. It was. Lucian's voice went soft. You were nice, not in a weak way, in a way that made the world feel less harsh. I'm not that person anymore, Evelyn said. Marcus changed me. Or maybe he revealed who I really am under the softness. Someone harder, angrier. You're still you, Evelyn, just a different version, a survivor. Lucian stood, pulling her up with him. and I'll take any version of you I can get. She wanted to kiss him. The urge came suddenly, surprising her, but she held back. Too much was happening too fast. She needed time to sort through her own feelings, figure out what was real and what was just gratitude or trauma bonding. "Thank you," she said instead, "for everything, for finding me, for believing I was worth finding." "Always," Lucian said. "Always worth finding." He left her then, closing the door quietly behind him. Evelyn stood alone in the room that had supposedly been hers, feeling the weight of the day settle onto her shoulders. She'd confronted her abuser, started the process of getting justice, taken the first real steps toward reclaiming her stolen life. But the hardest part was still ahead. The trial, the testimony, the public scrutiny, and underneath it all, the question that kept her awake at night. Who was she really? The soft woman in those old photographs, the hardened survivor she'd become, or someone entirely different, still waiting to emerge? She didn't have the answer yet, but she was going to find out. The district attorney's office looked exactly like every government building Evelyn had ever been in. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, and an overwhelming sense of bureaucratic exhaustion. She sat in a conference room across from Andrea Torres, the prosecutor assigned to Marcus's case, and watched the woman flip through a file that had grown uncomfortably thick over the past 3 weeks. "This is substantial," Andrea said. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. "The recording alone would be enough for charges, but with the medical records, the financial trail, and the witness testimony, we've got a strong case." "Strong enough to convict?" Lucian asked. He sat beside Evelyn, had barely left her side since the night of the gala. "Well, strong enough that his lawyers are already talking plea deals." Andrea closed the file. "Which brings me to why I asked you here today. Marcus's attorney approached me yesterday. They're willing to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "How reduced?" 5 years. Eligible for parole in 3. "That's not enough," Evelyn said immediately. "He kidnapped me. He erased 8 years of my life. 5 years is nothing." "I agree, which is why I'm recommending we reject the plea and go to trial." Andrea looked at Evelyn directly. "But I need you to understand what that means. A trial will take months. His lawyers will do everything they can to discredit you. They'll claim you're mentally unstable, that the memories you've recovered are false, that you're being manipulated by Lucian. They'll make your life hell." "They already did that," Evelyn said. "Marcus made sure of it, I know. But this will be different. This will be public. Every detail of your life will be examined and picked apart. The media will be relentless. And there's always the possibility that a jury won't convict. If that happens, Marcus walks away free." "What are the odds?" Lucian asked. "Honestly, 60-40 in our favor. Maybe 70-30 if the jury responds well to Evelyn's testimony. But nothing's guaranteed." Evelyn looked at her hands. The wedding ring Lucian had given her, the original one from 8 years ago, still sat on her finger. She'd stopped taking it off after the first week. "What do you think I should do?" she asked Andrea. "That's not my call. If you want to take the plea, I'll make it happen. You'll get some measure of justice, and you can move on with your life." Andrea paused. "But if you want to fight, if you want to make sure Marcus pays for everything he did, then we go to trial, and we make him answer for every single crime." Evelyn thought about the cafe, about Marcus's smug face as he'd admitted to destroying her life, about the 8 years she'd lost, the person she'd been erased, about all the times she'd questioned her own sanity because Nathan had told her she was imagining things, overreacting, being paranoid. "We go to trial," she said. "No plea deals. I want him to face everything he did." Andrea smiled, fierce and approving. "Good. Then let's make sure we're prepared." The next 2 months were a blur of depositions, witness interviews, and trial preparation. Evelyn spent hours with Andrea and her team, going over every detail of her story, anticipating every question the defense might ask. Robert worked with his legal contacts to gather additional evidence, tracking down former employees of the pharmaceutical company, building an airtight timeline of Marcus's movements. And slowly, painfully, more memories began to surface. They came in fragments, usually triggered by something mundane. The smell of coffee brought back a morning in their old apartment, Lucian making breakfast while she got ready for her shift. A song on the radio made her remember dancing in the kitchen, laughing at how terrible they both were. But other memories were harder. She remembered the last night before Marcus took her, though she didn't know it was the last night at the time. She'd been reading in bed while Lucian worked in his study. She'd felt safe, happy, completely unaware that her entire world was about to be ripped apart. She told Lucian about the memories when they came, and he listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral. She knew it hurt him, reliving those moments, but he never asked her to stop. "Do you remember the night we got engaged?" he asked one evening. They were in the library, going over transcripts from Marcus's initial interrogation. Evelyn closed her eyes, reaching for it. "A restaurant. Candlelight. You were nervous." "Terrified," Lucian admitted. "I'd been carrying the ring around for 2 weeks, trying to find the perfect moment." "Was it perfect?" "No. The waiter spilled wine on my jacket right before I was about to ask. You spent 5 minutes trying to clean it with club soda. And then, when I finally got the words out, you started crying so hard you couldn't answer for a full minute." He smiled. "It was a disaster, and it was perfect." "I wish I remembered it clearly," Evelyn said. "You will. Give it time." But time was something they were running out of. The trial date was set for mid-March, and with each passing day, the pressure mounted. The media had gotten hold of the story, and reporters camped outside the estate gates, shouting questions whenever anyone came or went. Evelyn stopped reading the news articles about herself. Half of them painted her as a victim, the other half as a scorned woman making false accusations for money. "Let them talk," Robert said when she mentioned it. "Once you testify, once the jury hears your story, none of that will matter." Evelyn wanted to believe him. Sarah visited the week before the trial, bringing takeout and moral support. "You holding up?" Sarah asked as they ate lo mein straight from the containers in Evelyn's room. "Barely," Evelyn admitted. "I keep having nightmares about testifying, about the jury not believing me, about Marcus walking free and disappearing before anyone can stop him. That's not going to happen. You don't know that." "I know you," Sarah said firmly. "I know how strong you are. I saw it when you were my resident, working impossible hours and never complaining. I saw it when you handled traumas that would have broken other nurses, and I see it now. You're going to get up on that stand and tell your truth, and the jury is going to believe you." "What if I freeze? What if I can't get the words out?" "Then you take a breath, and you try again. And if you need to take a break, you take one. There's no rule that says you have to be perfect." Sarah set down her food and took Evelyn's hand. "You've already survived the worst thing that could happen to you. Testifying is just telling people about it. You can do this." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "Thank you for being here, for believing me when no one else would." "Always." The night before the trial, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She paced her room, going over her testimony in her head, trying to anticipate every possible question. Around midnight, she gave up and went downstairs. Lucian was in his study, as she'd expected. He looked up when she knocked. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Not even close." She sat in the chair across from his desk. "Tell me something. If the jury finds him not guilty, what then?" "Then we appeal. Or we file civil charges, or we—" "That's not what I'm asking," Evelyn interrupted. "I'm asking what happens to us, to you and me, if he walks." Lucian was quiet for a moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'd like to think we'd still have a chance, that we could move forward anyway. But honestly, I don't know how either of us would handle it if he got away with this." "I'd want to kill him," Evelyn said. "If he walks out of that courtroom free, I think I might actually try to kill him." "Get in line." She laughed, but it sounded brittle. "I'm serious, Lucian. I don't know who I'd become if that happened. If after everything, after all this evidence and testimony and pain, the system just let him go. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen." Lucian stood and came around the desk, kneeling in front of her chair the way he had weeks ago. "Tomorrow, you're going to walk into that courtroom and you're going to tell 12 strangers what Marcus did to you, and it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you're not doing it alone. I'll be right there. Sarah will be there. Robert will be there. And when it's over, guilty or not guilty, we'll figure out the next step together. Promise?" "I promise." She kissed him then. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated. It just happened. And for a moment, everything else fell away. The fear, the anger, the uncertainty. There was just him, just this, just the feeling of finally being exactly where she was supposed to be. When they pulled apart, Lucian's eyes were dark with emotion. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I found you," he said. "What stopped you? The fact that you didn't remember me. That forcing anything would have been taking advantage." He touched her face gently. "I needed you to choose me. Not because of what we had before, but because of who we are now." "I choose you," Evelyn said. "Memories or no memories. I choose this. Even if tomorrow goes badly?" "Especially then." They stayed up for another hour, talking about nothing important. Books they'd read, movies they wanted to see, places they'd travel when this was over. Normal things. Future things. And when Evelyn finally went back to her room, she fell asleep almost immediately. The courthouse was chaos. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Security had to clear a path for Evelyn and Lucian to get through. Inside was slightly better, but the gallery was packed with spectators, journalists, and the morbidly curious. Marcus sat at the defense table between his lawyers, two men in expensive suits who looked like they'd been born in a courtroom. He didn't look at Evelyn as she entered, just stared straight ahead, his face carefully blank. The jury was brought in. 12 people who would decide if her story was believable, if her pain was real, if Marcus's confession was enough. Judge Morrison, a severe woman in her 60s, called the court to order. "We're here for the trial of Marcus Moretti," she said, "charged with kidnapping, identity fraud, conspiracy, and unlawful administration of controlled substances." "Ms. Torres, your opening statement." Andrea stood, commanding the courtroom's attention immediately. 8 years ago," she began, "Evelyn Hart disappeared. Not ran away. Not went on vacation. Disappeared. Her husband reported her missing. The police investigated. Private investigators searched. But no one could find her. Because Evelyn Hart didn't exist anymore. She'd been erased. Her memories suppressed through illegal pharmaceutical interventions. Her identity replaced with a fabricated past. And the man responsible for all of it is sitting at that table." She pointed at Marcus, and Evelyn saw him flinch slightly. "The defense will try to tell you this is a case of a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. That Evelyn's memories are false, her accusations baseless. But the evidence will show you otherwise. You'll hear a recording of Marcus Moretti confessing to everything. You'll see financial records proving he paid for illegal memory suppression treatments. You'll hear from medical experts who will explain exactly how such treatments work. And you'll hear from Evelyn herself, who will tell you what it's like to lose 8 years of your life and have to fight to get them back." Andrea paused, letting that sink in. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. For a woman who had her entire existence stolen. For the man who spent 8 years searching for his wife. For every person who's ever been victimized by someone who thought they were above the law. Marcus Moretti isn't above the law. And by the end of this trial, you'll agree that he needs to be held accountable for his crimes. She sat down. The defense attorney, a man named Gerald Paxton who looked like he charged by the syllable, stood for his opening statement. "My client," he said, "is innocent of these charges. What you're about to hear is a tragic case of mental illness being weaponized for financial gain. Evelyn Hart suffers from dissociative identity disorder, a condition that causes false memories and confusion about one's own past. Her estranged husband's brother, Lucian Moretti, took advantage of this vulnerability. He convinced her that she was his missing wife, created false evidence to support this delusion, and is now using her as a pawn in a family vendetta." Evelyn's hands clenched under the table. Andrea had warned her this was coming, but hearing it still made her furious. "You'll hear what sounds like a confession," Paxton continued, "but what you're actually hearing is my client, exhausted and harassed, saying whatever he thought would make his unstable ex-wife leave him alone. Context matters. And when you have all the context, you'll see that Marcus Moretti is not a criminal. He's a victim of false accusations, manipulated evidence, and a family conflict that has spiraled out of control." He sat down, looking satisfied with himself. The trial began. Andrea called her first witness, the detective who'd responded to the gala. He testified about Marcus's behavior, his attempt to grab Evelyn's phone, the panic in his voice when he realized he'd been recorded. Then came the financial expert who'd traced Marcus's payments to the pharmaceutical company. Charts and spreadsheets were displayed, showing a clear money trail from Marcus to the now-defunct facility that had conducted the illegal trials. The defense cross-examined aggressively, trying to poke holes in the timeline, suggesting the payments could have been for legitimate purposes. Isn't it true, Paxton asked, that the company also conducted legal research? Yes, the expert admitted, but these specific payments were routed through shell companies and offshore accounts. That's not how you pay for legal services. But it's possible. Technically, yes. No further questions. Day 2 brought the medical experts. A neurologist explained how memory suppression worked, the drugs involved, the psychological conditioning required. A psychiatrist testified that Evelyn showed no signs of dissociative identity disorder, that her memories, fragmented as they were consistent with trauma recovery, not false memory syndrome. The defense brought their own expert, who suggested that Evelyn's symptoms could be explained by other conditions, that memory recovery was unreliable, that the brain could be easily manipulated. It went back and forth like that for days. Evidence presented, evidence challenged. Witnesses called, witnesses cross-examined. Evelyn watched it all, her anxiety mounting, knowing that eventually it would be her turn. On day 6, Andrea called Evelyn to the stand. The walk from her seat to the witness box felt like miles. Every eye in the courtroom followed her. She could feel Marcus watching, though she refused to look at him. She was sworn in, sat down, and faced Andrea. "Please state your name for the record," Andrea said. "Evelyn Hart, or—" She paused. "Evelyn Moretti. I'm not sure which is correct anymore." "Let's start at the beginning. What's your earliest clear memory?" Evelyn took a breath. This was it, everything they'd prepared for. "Waking up in an apartment in Chicago 8 years ago," she said. "I was told I'd been in a car accident, that I'd suffered a head injury and might be confused for a while. Nathan Cole, the man I knew as Nathan Cole, was there. He said he was my boyfriend. He showed me pictures of us together, told me about our relationship, and I believed him because I didn't remember anything else." "Did you question it?" "At first. I asked about my family, my past. He had answers for everything. Parents who'd died in an accident when I was younger, a childhood in Michigan, nursing school in Illinois. It all seemed plausible. And the memories were there, fuzzy but present. I thought I was just recovering from the injury." "When did you start to suspect something was wrong?" "It was gradual. There were always little things that didn't quite fit. Preferences I didn't remember having. Skills that felt instinctive but that I couldn't recall learning. A constant feeling that I was living someone else's life." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was lucky to have survived the accident, that I should be grateful for what I had." "And then what happened?" "We got married. Nathan, Marcus, proposed 6 months after I woke up, said he didn't want to waste any more time. The wedding was small, just us and a courthouse. He said I'd wanted it that way because of my parents not being there to see it." She looked down at her hands. "I believed him. I believed everything." Andrea walked her through the next 8 years. The marriage, the isolation, Nathan's increasingly controlling behavior, the gaslighting, the infidelity, the financial abuse. "Did you ever try to leave?" Andrea asked. "Once, about 4 years in. I packed a bag, planned to go stay with a coworker, but Nathan came home early. He didn't hit me, didn't threaten me. He just looked so hurt. Said he couldn't believe I'd throw away our marriage over nothing, that I was overreacting again, that I needed help." Evelyn's throat tightened. "He scheduled an appointment with a psychiatrist, put me on medication for anxiety, and I took it because I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was the problem. What did the medication do?" "Made everything foggy. I stopped questioning things, stopped noticing the inconsistencies. I just went to work, came home, went through the motions. It wasn't until I stopped taking it against Nathan's wishes that I started waking up again." "And what happened when you woke up?" "I realized I was trapped in a marriage to a man I didn't love and couldn't remember choosing, so I asked for a divorce." Andrea played the recording then. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom, arrogant and cruel, admitting to everything. Evelyn watched the jury's faces as they listened, saw the shock, the disgust, the dawning realization that this was real. When it finished, Andrea asked, "Is that Marcus Moretti's voice?" "Yes." "And did you doctor or alter this recording in any way?" "No, that's exactly what he said to me. No further questions." Paxton stood for cross-examination, and Evelyn braced herself. "Ms. Hart," he began, his tone deceptively gentle. You've been through a lot. No one disputes that, but I'd like to ask about your mental state. You said you felt like you were living someone else's life. That sounds like dissociation, doesn't it? I felt that way because I was living someone else's life, Evelyn said, because Marcus had erased who I really was. Or because you were suffering from a mental health condition that made you confused about your own identity. That's not what happened. But how can you be sure? You admit your memories are fragmented. You say you can't remember large portions of your past. Isn't it possible that the memories you think you're recovering are actually false? Implanted by Mr. Lucian Moretti to support his version of events? No. The medical records prove who I am. The photographs can be doctored. Medical records can be falsified. I'm asking about what you remember personally. Can you swear, under oath, that every memory you've recovered is real and not a construction? Evelyn hesitated. I can't prove a negative, but I know what Marcus did. I heard him admit it. In a conversation you orchestrated wearing a recording device after you'd been living with his estranged brother for weeks. Paxton's voice hardened. Isn't it true that Lucian Moretti has a financial interest in discrediting my client? That he stands to gain control of family assets if Marcus is convicted? Objection, Andrea said. Relevance. Goes to bias, Your Honor, Paxton argued. I'll allow it. The witness will answer. Evelyn looked at Paxton directly. Lucian has never asked me for anything. He gave me a place to stay when I had nowhere else to go. He helped me understand what happened to me. And yes, he'll benefit if Marcus is convicted, because his brother will finally face consequences for his crimes. Or because he's successfully manipulated a vulnerable woman into believing in an elaborate fantasy. I'm not delusional, Evelyn said, her voice rising. I know what happened to me. I lived through 8 years of lies and manipulation. I had my entire identity stolen, and the man responsible is sitting right there. She pointed at Marcus, finally looking at him directly. He stared back, his face cold. Are you sure? Paxton asked. Are you absolutely certain that your memories are real? That you're not simply confused? I'm certain, Evelyn said, and so is he. You can see it in his face. He knows exactly what he did. He just thought he'd get away with it. No further questions. Evelyn left the stand on shaking legs. Andrea gave her an approving nod as she passed. Lucian reached for her hand as she sat down, and she gripped it hard. You did great, he whispered. He made it sound like I'm crazy. The jury saw through it, I promise. The trial continued for another week. More witnesses, more evidence, closing arguments from both sides. And finally, it went to the jury. Evelyn waited with Lucian and Robert in a small conference room while the jury deliberated. Hours passed, then a full day, then 2 days. Is this good or bad? Evelyn asked Andrea when she came to check on them. It's hard to say. Sometimes a long deliberation means they're being thorough. Sometimes it means they're deadlocked. What if they can't reach a verdict? Then we do this all over again with a new jury. Evelyn thought she might be sick. On the afternoon of the third day, the bailiff came to tell them the jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled quickly. Evelyn took her seat, Lucian beside her, and watched the jury file back in. She tried to read their faces, but they were carefully neutral. Judge Morrison called the court to order. Has the jury reached a verdict? She asked. The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of kidnapping, how do you find? Guilty. Evelyn's breath caught. On the charge of identity fraud? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud? Guilty. On the charge of unlawful administration of controlled substances? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, calling for order. Evelyn heard none of it. She just stared at Marcus, watching his face crumble as the reality set in. Guilty, on all counts. He was going to prison. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Marcus was remanded into custody immediately, his bail revoked. As the marshals led him away, he looked at Evelyn one last time. She stared back, unflinching. She'd won. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. Andrea handled most of it, giving a prepared statement about justice being served. But when a reporter asked Evelyn how she felt, she stopped. Relieved, she said, and angry that it took this long, and determined to make sure no one else goes through what I did. What's next for you? Someone called out. Evelyn looked at Lucian, who stood beside her, steady and solid. Next, she said, I'm going to reclaim the life Marcus stole from me, and I'm going to live it. The sentencing hearing fell on a Tuesday in early April, when Chicago was finally starting to thaw after the brutal winter. Evelyn woke early that morning, not from nerves this time, but from something else. Anticipation, maybe, or the bone-deep need to see this through to the absolute end. She dressed carefully, not the armor she'd worn to trial, but something softer, a navy dress that Margaret said she'd loved 8 years ago. It fit differently now, a little tighter through the shoulders, a little looser at the waist. Her body had changed. Everything had changed. Lucian was waiting for her in the foyer, talking quietly with Robert. They both looked up when she descended the stairs. "Ready?" Lucian asked. "More than ready." The courtroom was less crowded than it had been during the trial. Most of the reporters had moved on to newer scandals, though a few diehards remained, notebooks ready. Evelyn took her seat and watched Marcus being led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. 3 weeks in county lockup had stripped away the last of his polish. He looked smaller, defeated, good. Judge Morrison entered and everyone stood. When they sat again, she wasted no time. "We're here for sentencing in the matter of the people versus Marcus Moretti. Before I pronounce sentence, I'll hear from the victim. Ms. Hart, if you'd like to make a statement." Evelyn stood. She'd prepared remarks, written them out, and revised them a dozen times. But now, looking at Marcus, she set the paper aside. 8 years ago, she began, her voice steady, I was a different person. Happier, probably. Softer, definitely. I had a husband I loved, a career I cared about, a life that made sense. And then one day, all of that was taken from me. Not by some random tragedy, not by an accident or illness, by a man who decided my entire existence was disposable, who thought he could erase me and remake me into something that served his purposes. She paused, making sure every word landed. Marcus stole 8 years from me. 8 years I'll never get back. 8 years of memories, experiences, growth. He turned me into a stranger to myself, made me doubt my own sanity, made me believe I was the problem, that I was broken, that I deserved the misery he put me through. Her voice hardened. But here's what he didn't count on. I survived. I survived his manipulation, his cruelty, his attempts to break me down completely. And not only did I survive, I found my way back. Not to who I was, because that person is gone, but to who I'm becoming. Someone stronger. Someone who refuses to be anyone's victim ever again. She looked at Marcus directly for the first time. You wanted to prove you were better than your brother, that you could take what was his and make it yours. But all you proved is that you're a coward, that the only way you could feel powerful was by destroying someone who couldn't fight back. Well, I'm fighting back now, and I'm winning. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. I don't forgive you, Evelyn continued. I'm not going to stand here and say I've moved past this or that. I hope you find peace. You don't deserve my forgiveness or my sympathy. You deserve exactly what's coming to you, and I hope every single day you spend in prison, you remember that this is your own fault. You chose this. You chose cruelty over decency, revenge over humanity, and now you get to live with the consequences. She sat down, her heart pounding. Judge Morrison nodded. Thank you, Ms. Hart. Mr. Moretti, do you wish to make a statement? Marcus's lawyer whispered something to him, but Marcus shook his head and stood. I have nothing to say, he said flatly, except that history will prove I was right. Right about what? The judge asked. That some people matter more than others. That Lucian was never as good as everyone thought. That's enough, Judge Morrison interrupted. Sit down, Mr. Moretti. Marcus sat, his face red with suppressed rage. The judge looked down at her papers, then back at Marcus. I've presided over a lot of cases in my career, she said. Violent crimes, financial fraud, every kind of human ugliness you can imagine. But this case is unique in its calculated cruelty. You didn't just commit crimes, Mr. Moretti. You systematically destroyed another human being's identity for your own gratification. You stole years of her life and felt entitled to do so. And even now, you show no remorse. She paused, letting that hang in the air. The sentencing guidelines for your crimes range from 15 to 30 years. The prosecution has recommended 25. The defense has asked for leniency based on your lack of prior criminal history. She looked at Marcus coldly. I see no reason for leniency. Marcus Moretti, I hereby sentence you to 30 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 20 years. You are also ordered to pay restitution to Miss Hart in the amount of $2 million for the damages you've caused. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. 30 years. Evelyn felt something release in her chest, something that had been clenched tight since Christmas Eve. It wasn't quite relief, more like the first full breath after being underwater too long. Marcus was led away, and this time he didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, the remaining reporters asked the usual questions. How did she feel? Was justice served? What would she do now? Andrea handled most of it, but Evelyn answered one question directly. Is 30 years enough? A young reporter asked. No, Evelyn said honestly. Nothing would be enough. You can't give me back those 8 years. But it's something. It's accountability. And sometimes that has to be enough. Back at the estate, Margaret had prepared a lunch that no one really ate. They sat around the dining table, Evelyn, Lucian, Robert, Sarah, picking at food and processing what had happened. 30 years, Sarah said finally. He'll be almost 70 when he gets out. If he gets out, Robert said, federal prison is no joke. 20 years minimum means 20 years minimum. Good, Evelyn said. She meant it. They talked for a while longer, but eventually Sarah had to leave for her shift and Robert had to get back to his office. When it was just Evelyn and Lucian, the house felt suddenly very quiet. What now? Lucian asked. They were in the library, the fire burning low. We've been so focused on the trial, on getting justice. I don't think either of us has thought about what comes after. I have, Evelyn said. A little? And? I want to go back to nursing. Real nursing, not just covering emergency shifts for double pay. I want to work with trauma patients, specifically. People who've been through something terrible and need someone who understands. That makes sense, Lucian said. You'd be good at that. I also want to do something about what happened to me. The memory suppression, the illegal trials. There are probably other victims out there, people who were experimented on without proper consent. I want to help them. Lucian smiled. You want to start a foundation? Maybe. Is that crazy? Not even a little. He reached for her hand. What about us? Have you thought about that? Evelyn squeezed his fingers. I've thought about it constantly, but I need you to understand something. The woman you married 8 years ago, that soft, gentle person Sarah talks about, she's not coming back. Marcus changed me. The trauma changed me. I'm harder now, more suspicious. I have nightmares. I probably always will. I know. And I still don't remember everything. There are pieces missing, things I might never get back. Our first date, the proposal, our wedding night. Those memories are gone, Lucian. They belong to someone else. Then we'll make new ones, Lucian said, echoing what he'd told her months ago. Better ones, maybe. Built on who we are now, not who we were then. What if I'm not who you want anymore? You are exactly who I want. The woman who survived 8 years of manipulation and came out fighting. The woman who stood up in court and refused to be broken. That's who I want, Evelyn, not some idealized version from the past. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could build something real despite everything that had been lost. I'm scared, she admitted, of trusting wrong again, of letting someone in only to have them destroy me. I know, and I can't promise I'll never hurt you or disappoint you because that's what people do. We're imperfect. But I can promise I'll never deliberately betray you, never manipulate you, never make you doubt your own reality. He brought her hand to his lips. I can promise I'll spend every day trying to deserve the second chance we've been given. That's a lot of pressure. I can handle it. Evelyn laughed and it felt good. Real. Okay, then let's try. No promises about where it goes. No guarantees that I won't have a breakdown or push you away when things get hard. Just trying. I'll take trying, Lucian said. They sat together in the firelight, and for the first time in longer than Evelyn could remember, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible. Over the next few months, Evelyn slowly rebuilt her life. She started working part-time at Northwestern Memorial's Trauma Center, specifically with patients who'd survived violent crimes or serious accidents. The work was hard, emotionally exhausting, but it felt right. She understood what it meant to have your life shattered and have to piece it back together. One afternoon, she was working with a young woman named Tara, who'd been in an abusive relationship. The woman was terrified of going home, convinced her ex would find her. "What if he's waiting for me?" Tara asked, her voice shaking. "What if I leave here and he's just there?" "Then you call the police immediately," Evelyn said. "You don't engage, don't try to reason with him. You protect yourself first." "But what if I can't? What if I freeze?" Evelyn thought about the cafe, about confronting Marcus, about how terrified she'd been. "You might freeze," she said honestly. "Fear does that. But here's what I learned. Freezing isn't weakness. It's your brain trying to protect you. And when the fear passes, when you can move again, you do what needs to be done, one step at a time." "Did you freeze?" Tara asked. "When you had to face your ex?" Word had gotten around about Evelyn's story. She'd tried to keep it quiet, but the trial had been too public. "Yeah," Evelyn said, "multiple times, but I kept going anyway. And you will, too." Tara left with a safety plan and a list of resources. Evelyn hoped it would be enough. Sarah stopped by one evening with takeout and wine. "So," Sarah said as they ate pad thai in Evelyn's room. She still thought of it as her room, not theirs, though Lucien had made it clear she could change that whenever she wanted. "How's it going with Lucien?" "Good. Complicated. We're taking it slow." "How slow are we talking?" "Separate bedrooms slow," Evelyn admitted. "I know it's weird. We were married once, but I need to feel like I'm choosing this, not just falling back into something because it's convenient." "That's not weird. That's healthy." Sarah poured them both more wine. "Are the memories still coming back?" "Some. Little things mostly. I remembered our honeymoon last week. Not the whole thing, just a moment. We were sitting on a beach at sunset, and I said something about how I wished we could stay there forever. And Lucien said we could, that he'd buy a house on the beach and we'd never leave." "Did he mean it?" "Probably not. But it was nice that he said it." Evelyn smiled. "The memories don't hurt as much anymore. They used to feel like someone else's life. Now they feel like mine, just from a long time ago." "That's progress." "I guess so." They talked late into the night, and when Sarah finally left, Evelyn felt lighter. She had her best friend back. She had work that mattered. She had a future that was hers to shape. It wasn't the life she'd had 8 years ago, but maybe it was better. In August, Robert came to dinner with news. "The pharmaceutical company that conducted the illegal trials is being sued," he said, passing the salad. "Multiple victims have come forward. Turns out Marcus wasn't the only one who paid them to mess with people's memories." "How many victims?" Lucien asked. "At least 15 that we know of. Could be more." Robert looked at Evelyn. "They're forming a class action suit. Wondered if you'd want to be involved, not as a plaintiff, you've already got your restitution, but as an advocate, someone who can speak to the experience." "What would that involve?" Evelyn asked. "Meetings with lawyers, maybe testimony if it goes to trial, public advocacy to raise awareness about this kind of abuse." He paused. "It's a lot to ask, I know. If you'd rather just move on, I'll do it," Evelyn said immediately. "If my story can help other people get justice, I'm in." "You're sure?" "The media attention will start up again. People will have opinions." "Let them have opinions. I'm done hiding." Robert grinned. "That's what I hoped you'd say." The advocacy work was harder than Evelyn expected. She met with other victims, heard their stories, saw how the same techniques had been used to destroy different lives. A woman whose husband had paid to erase her memory of their prenuptial agreement. A man whose business partner had tried to make him forget their original partnership terms. Even a teenager whose parents had attempted to erase his memories of coming out as gay. Every story made Evelyn angrier and more determined. She testified before a congressional committee about the need for stricter regulations on experimental treatments. She gave interviews to journalists, explaining how memory suppression worked and why it needed to be stopped. And she worked with Robert's legal team to build an airtight case against everyone involved. It was exhausting. Some days she wanted to quit, to hide at the estate and never deal with people again. But then she'd get a letter from someone who'd seen her testimony. Someone who'd found the courage to come forward because she had. Someone who'd been made to feel crazy and was finally being believed. Those letters made it worth it. One evening in late September, Evelyn was working in the library when Lucian found her surrounded by case files. "You need a break," he said. "I need to finish reviewing these depositions. They'll still be there tomorrow." He pulled her to her feet. "Come on. I want to show you something." "Lucian, trust me." She let him lead her outside through the gardens to a part of the estate she'd never explored. Beyond the formal gardens was a small wooded area, and nestled in the trees was a building she hadn't noticed before. "What is this?" she asked. "A studio. You used to paint here before." Evelyn stopped. "I painted?" "Not professionally, just for fun. You said it helped you relax after difficult shifts." He unlocked the door. "I haven't touched anything since you disappeared." "I couldn't." Inside the studio was exactly as she'd left it 8 years ago. Canvases stacked against the walls, some finished, some just sketches. Brushes in jars, tubes of paint organized by color. A large window overlooking the woods. Evelyn walked through the space, touching things carefully. She picked up a finished canvas, a landscape, trees in autumn colors. "I don't remember painting this," she said. "Maybe you will, or maybe you'll make new paintings. Either way, it's yours if you want it." Evelyn set the canvas down and turned to face him. "Why are you so patient with me? Most people would have given up by now, moved on to someone easier." "I don't want easier. I want you." Lucian crossed to her. "And I'm patient because I spent 8 years searching for you. Another few months while you figure out what you want doesn't even register. What if I never figure it out? What if I'm always this broken?" "You're not broken, Evelyn. You're healing. There's a difference." He touched her face gently. "And for what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you need to be. Helping people, making a difference, becoming someone you're proud of." "I'm not sure I'm there yet." "You will be." She kissed him then, properly this time. Not the desperate kiss from before the trial, but something slower, deliberate. A promise that maybe, eventually, they'd find their way back to each other. When they pulled apart, Lucian was smiling. "What?" Evelyn asked. "Nothing, just, I've missed you. Even when you were standing right in front of me, I missed you." "I'm here now," Evelyn said. "Not all the way back, not the person I was, but here." "That's enough." In November, the class action suit against the pharmaceutical company settled. The company was forced to shut down permanently, its assets liquidated to pay victims. It wasn't enough. Nothing could truly compensate for what had been taken. But it was something. Evelyn used her portion of the settlement money to start a foundation. The Recovered Lives Foundation, dedicated to helping victims of coerced medical procedures and memory manipulation. They provided legal assistance, therapy, advocacy, and support. The foundation's first office was small, just 3 rooms in a building downtown. But Evelyn stood in the empty space and felt prouder of this than anything else she'd accomplished. "You're really doing this," Sarah said, helping her unpack boxes on opening day. "I really am." "Your parents would be proud." Evelyn paused. "My real parents, the ones from before. I still can't picture them clearly." "Maybe that's okay. Maybe this version of you gets to define herself without that baggage." "Is that awful? That part of me is glad I don't remember them?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "It's human. We don't owe our past anything, not when it was taken from us." They worked in comfortable silence, building something new from the wreckage of what had been destroyed. December arrived with snow and a phone call that Evelyn had been half expecting. "Marcus wants to see you," Andrea said. "His lawyer reached out, says he wants to apologize, make amends." "No," Evelyn said immediately. "You're sure? It might give you closure." "I have closure. He's in prison for 30 years. That's all the closure I need." "I told them you'd probably say that, but I had to ask." After she hung up, Evelyn sat for a long time, thinking about the man Marcus had been. The one who'd stolen her life and felt entitled to do so. She'd spent so much time being angry at him, letting that anger fuel her through the trial and the advocacy work. But now, thinking about him in a cell somewhere, probably manipulating his lawyer into thinking he'd changed, she felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, nothing. He was a problem that had been solved, a chapter that was closed, and she had better things to focus on. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after signing those divorce papers, Evelyn woke to find Lucian standing at her bedroom door. "I know we're taking things slow," he said, "but would you have dinner with me tonight, somewhere that's not this house?" Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking you on a date. Evelyn smiled. Then yes. He took her to a small Italian restaurant in the city, the kind of place with red checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. It was perfect. Over pasta and wine, they talked about everything and nothing. Work and stupid movies and plans for the foundation's expansion. Normal things. Couple things. I have something for you, Lucian said as they waited for dessert. He pulled out a small box, not ring-sized, something smaller, and slid it across the table. Inside was a key. What's this? Evelyn asked. A key to the studio. I had it updated, fixed the heating so you can use it year-round. If you want to paint again or just have a space that's yours. Evelyn's throat tightened. Thank you. There's something else. Lucian took a breath. I talked to a lawyer about our marriage. Technically, we're still married. The marriage license from 8 years ago is still valid. But if you want an annulment, if you want to start completely fresh— I don't want an annulment, Evelyn interrupted. You don't? No. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to be fully married again. To live together and share everything. But I don't want to erase what we had, even if I don't remember all of it. She reached across the table for his hand. What if we do this? We stay technically married, but we date. Like normal people. We go on more dinners like this. We take trips. We figure out who we are together now, not who we were then. And when we're ready, if we're ready, we have another wedding, Lucian said slowly. A new one you'll actually remember. Exactly. I like that plan. They left the restaurant and walked through the city, past shop windows decorated with lights and people hurrying home to their families. A year ago, Evelyn had been alone, broken, convinced her life was over. Now she was here, holding hands with a man who'd spent 8 years searching for her, building a foundation that helped people, making art in a studio overlooking woods, living a life that was messy and complicated and entirely her own. What are you thinking about? Lucian asked. How much has changed, Evelyn said. How different everything is. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. She stopped walking and turned to face him. I was so angry for so long. At Marcus, at what he took from me. But I think I'm finally ready to let that go. Not to forgive him. He doesn't deserve that. But to stop letting what he did define me. Who are you then, if you're not defined by what happened? Evelyn thought about it. Someone who survived, someone who fought back, someone who turned her trauma into something useful. She smiled. And maybe, eventually, someone who's happy. You're not happy now. I'm getting there. It's a process. They walked back to the car and drove to the estate. At the door, Lucian kissed her goodnight like they were teenagers, sweet and chaste and full of promise. Same time next week? He asked. It's a date, Evelyn said. She went upstairs to her room, her space, the place where she could be herself without performing for anyone, and looked out at the gardens covered in snow. Somewhere out there was the studio, waiting for her to fill it with new paintings, new memories, new evidence that she'd survived and rebuilt and refused to stay broken. A year ago, she'd thought her life was ending. She'd been wrong. It was just beginning. 6 months later, on a perfect June morning, Evelyn and Lucian stood in a small chapel surrounded by friends and family. Not the chapel from 8 years ago that belonged to someone else, to a version of them that no longer existed. This was a new place, a fresh start. Sarah was there, sitting in the front row with Robert. Margaret was crying openly, not even trying to hide it. Other faces filled the pews, people from the foundation, nurses from Northwestern Memorial, lawyers who'd helped with the trial. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate vows, no pretense that this was the first time or that they were the same people they'd been before. Just honest promises about who they were now and who they wanted to become together. I can't promise I'll always be easy, Evelyn said, holding Lucian's hands. I have nightmares. I have trust issues. I'm still figuring out who I am without the trauma defining me. But I can promise I'll keep trying, keep fighting to be better. And I can promise that I choose you every day, knowing exactly what that means. And I promise to be patient when you're struggling, Lucian said, to listen when you need to talk and give you space when you need to breathe, to never make you doubt your reality or question your worth, and to build a life with you that's ours, not a recreation of what we lost, but something entirely new. They exchanged rings, new ones designed together, with inscriptions that read "Moving Forward." When the officiant pronounced them married, the applause was deafening. At the reception, people came up to Evelyn with congratulations and stories. A woman she'd met through the foundation, tears in her eyes, thanked her for giving her the courage to report what had happened to her. A young nurse told her she'd been inspired by Evelyn's testimony to specialize in trauma care. "You've changed lives," Sarah said, pulling Evelyn aside. "You know that, right?" "I'm just doing what I can," Evelyn said. "That's what heroes say. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who got angry enough to fight back." "Same thing," Sarah said with a smile. Later, when the party had wound down and most guests had left, Evelyn found herself standing in the gardens with Lucian, watching the sun set over Chicago. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired, happy, a little overwhelmed." She leaned against him. "But mostly grateful that you found me, that I found my way back, that we get a second chance at this. What do you think happens next?" "I don't know. We keep working, keep building the foundation. Maybe travel somewhere. Maybe buy that beach house you promised 8 years ago." Lucian laughed. "I did say that, didn't I?" "You did, and I intend to hold you to it." They stood together as darkness fell, and lights began twinkling in the city below. Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago, desperate, alone, convinced she'd lost everything that mattered. That woman was gone. Not erased the way Marcus had tried to erase her, but transformed, reshaped by trauma and survival and the conscious choice to keep living despite the pain. She'd learned that identity wasn't something that could be stolen and replanted wholesale. It was built daily, through choices and actions and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else define who you were. She'd learned that healing wasn't linear, that some days you woke up feeling whole and other days you felt like you were falling apart all over again. She'd learned that justice, when it came, didn't fix everything, but it was still worth fighting for. Most importantly, she'd learned that the life you built after trauma could be just as meaningful as the one that came before. Maybe more so, because you'd fought for every piece of it. "What are you thinking about?" Lucian asked. "That I'm glad Marcus failed," Evelyn said. "He tried to erase me, to turn me into someone controllable and small. And he failed completely. I'm still here, I'm still fighting, and I'm more myself than I've ever been." "He didn't just fail," Lucian said quietly. "He created his own worst nightmare. Someone who knows exactly what he is and will spend the rest of her life making sure no one else suffers the same fate." "Good," Evelyn said. "Let that be his legacy." They went back inside eventually, back to the party and the music and the people who loved them, back to the life they were building together, brick by brick, day by day. And when Evelyn looked around at what she'd created, the foundation, the relationships, the purpose she'd found in helping others heal, she realized something important. Marcus had stolen 8 years from her, but she'd taken that theft and transformed it into something meaningful. She'd turned her pain into purpose, her trauma into advocacy, her survival into a roadmap for others. He tried to make her disappear. Instead, she'd become impossible to ignore. That, Evelyn thought as she danced with her husband under lights strung across the garden, was the best revenge of all. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just healing, but helping others heal. Not just reclaiming her stolen life, but building something even better in its place. She didn't know what the future held. There would be hard days ahead, moments when the memories, recovered or forever lost, would hurt. Moments when the nightmares came back or the fear tried to take hold. But she wasn't facing any of it alone anymore. She had Lucian, who'd never stopped searching. She had Sarah, who'd believed her from the beginning. She had Margaret and Robert and all the people at the foundation who were fighting the same fight. And she had herself, the survivor, the fighter, the woman who'd refused to stay broken. That woman, Evelyn knew, could handle whatever came next. The music played on, and she danced with her husband under the stars, grateful for second chances and hard-won victories and the life she'd clawed back from the darkness. She was Evelyn Moretti. She was a survivor. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. And finally, after everything, she was home.